and welcome back to the Girl with the Shovel. Today we are going to repot this huge Monstera. So there are a few different reasons why you might be needing to repot a Monstera. First is if it's outgrowing its pot, but you need to be aware that a lot of times Monstera likes to be a little more root bound. Okay, so make sure that it gets really tight before you pot it up. Second, you might need to split some Monsteras. Like in this case, this Monstera is several years old and it has been kind of neglected. It was kind of my test experiment plant. And so I didn't do everything right, and I obviously kept multiple Monstera in the same pot. And today we're going to be taking them out, we're going to be splitting them, and then putting them in a new pot. And then the third reason why you might want to repot a Monstera is to add a moss pole. Okay, and that's exactly what I'm going to do today. I'm going to split it so it's just one, and I'm going to put it in a pot with the moss pole so it can start thriving and turn into a gorgeous single stem Monstera. So some of the things you may need is a new pot if you're going up or down a size, as well as some soil. Monsteras like either a tropical houseplant soil or a regular indoor houseplant soil amended with some orchid bark, something nice and airy, and it can even do well with an aroid mix. I would just add a little bit more peat moss to that so it doesn't completely fall over, so it has some stability there. And then you might also need a moss pole if you're adding one. So let's get right into it. Step one is you're going to remove your Monstera from its current pot. Okay, so follow me along as I try to get this big old guy out of his pot. Okay, so one thing you'll notice is that Monsteras are really good at latching onto things. So if you look at the inside of my pot, it actually has a lot of roots that are kind of sticking on to the sides there. So if yours is too stuck, you might want to get like a knife and run it around the outside of your pot. Or just give it a good yank, but be very careful not to pull one of the stems off. So step two is to loosen the soil from around the roots. And then we're gonna go into step three, which is going to be separating your Monsteras. So I'm just going to, as I loosen the roots and the soil around the roots, I'm going to go ahead and start separating those Monsteras. So I have a few different plants. Okay, so that one pot, I know it was a huge pot, but it actually had 6 different Monstera stems. So we've got, you can tell, most of them have about 3 leaves on them. And you can see that root system there. This root system will get a lot healthier and a lot better when it's on its own and it won't be competing with all of the other stems. So it'll have its nice own little pot and its nice own little moss pole to grow up in. So we've got a separate one here. And as you could tell, without the moss pole, these guys kind of grow horizontally until they can reach a tree or something in nature that they can start climbing up. So that's why a lot of these started going off to the side. And that's when I was like, no, I really need to take care of this guy. Okay, so next up is step number 4, and we are going to be using our pot, putting the Monstera inside, and starting to add some soil. So here's my pot. I'm gonna go ahead and grab this, this first Monstera here. And this is why It's a lot easier to add your moss pole and such and get the good setup when it's young. You know, some of these, like this guy would probably be prime size for getting its permanent home, you know. So this guy's gonna give me a little bit of grief, and it's gonna look a little funky as it starts growing in its new light, but then eventually in several months it'll start throwing out good new growth. It will be nice and healthy because it's in its own space, and then we'll really be able to have it take off. So I'm gonna start adding the soil in the bottom of my pot. Okay, so now that we have the pot about halfway full, now we're going to add our moss pole. And if you remember, this is the moss pole that, well, it's one of the moss poles that I made, but specifically from the DIY moss pole tutorial video. If you want to check that out, make yourself a cool, awesome sphagnum moss pole that will stand up to all the future weight of this big guy, then check out the video here. So we have it about halfway full. We're gonna add the moss pole and start adding the soil around it to hold the pole in place as well as to hold the rest of the Monstera in place. And just remember that you want the moss pole to be on the back side of your Monstera. Okay, you want it right up against where you see those aerial roots or any buds. You want that back up against the moss pole. So that leaves us to step number 6, where we're adding the rest of the soil, and we want to compact it around those roots, okay? So, and around the moss pole so that they stay up. So make sure that you're pressing down as you go, and you're lining it to where you want it, and that you're just giving some good pressure to hold it all in. Okay, so now that we have all of our soil in, honestly, this pot is probably a little big for what I've got. I definitely wouldn't go any bigger than this. I know that this guy will get a lot of roots fast because it is an older plant. So it will have a lot more energy stored up. But we want to make sure that we don't go too big because then we'll run into watering problems. So if you have a larger pot like this, make sure that you have extra well draining soil, and that will help. And right now I'm mainly just getting, this one's a good pot that I had that is a ceramic pot, so it's got a nice weight to it, so it won't fall over when it's climbing up. So this leads us to step number 7, which is securing your Monstera to the moss pole. So I'm gonna go grab my plant ties. So we're gonna start tying this to the moss pole. So here's my plant ties. It's a nice little Velcro on one side that sticks to the other. This is actually really nice. It came with the moss pole kit that I got off of Amazon. So I'm just gonna start wrapping it around and securing it here to the moss pole. Okay, and because this guy is leaning so much, because he never had anything to climb on, I'm going to do another one just kind of loose around here until it starts kind of taking its shape. Okay, so I'm going to do a loose little plant tie around here. Okay, and that'll hold it up just until it gets itself reoriented, because I'm now training it from moving horizontally to now we're saying, hey, you've got a support, let's start climbing up. So there you have it. Now you know how to repot your Monstera, as well as how to separate your Monsteras if you have multiples in one pot, and how to add a moss pole to your Monstera. If you have any more questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And if you want any more information on how to take care of your houseplants, feel free to check out my website at thegirlwiththeshovel.com, as well as we have a course for beginner plant parents called Indoor Plants Accelerated, for anyone who is struggling with their houseplants, who are struggling to keep them alive, and who want to kind of take a shortcut to keeping them alive and not wasting so many plants on trial and error. Trust me, I did it, so you don't have to. So I share all of my tips and tricks and secrets on my course, so feel free to check it out. Here's the link, and I'll also leave a link in the description below. Have a good one, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.